So what is Photoshop? It is one of the most bandied around words in the era of digital photography, but very few people actually understand what it really is. Photoshop, or PS, is a software program designed specifically for processing digital photographs and converting them from raw and untreated JPEG files into the polished, finished product. It is an indispensable program in the armoury of any photographer. But what is a digital negative, a DNG, or a RAW file? What does the term JPEG mean? And who uses a TIFF? Welcome to the world of digital darkroom and where images don't have a physical negative anymore. The technology behind the development of the raw image file was designed to simulate the latitude of an actual film negative. Raw image files are sometimes called digital negatives, as they fulfill the same role negatives in film photography. That is, the negative is not directly usable as an image, but has all of the information needed to create an image. Likewise, the process of converting a raw image file into a viewable format is sometimes called developing a raw image. By analogy with the film development process used to convert photographic film into viewable prints. A raw image file can be converted or processed into files that are usable for making photographic prints, for being transmitted quickly over the internet, and for being used in print publications. But by far the most common file type is the JPEG, which stands for the Joint Photographic Experts Group, and has been ratified by the International Organisation for Standardisation. The raw image file contains within it the most important information that can be attained, depending on the sensor that was employed to capture the image. This gives the photographer far more leeway in the preparation of digital negatives to create files for different purposes. Once the raw file is converted to a JPEG, the image becomes compressed and loses much of its information. But the colour can be adjusted and the sharpness can be tweaked, so much more of the detail can be displayed. JPEG files are smaller in size and are easier to transmit over the internet. TIFF stands for Tagged Image File Format and tends to be a file that carries more colour depth information. And this is why it is a popular file amongst graphic artists and art directors of print publications. Both TIFF and JPEG files can produce high-quality photographic prints when converted from raw files. There are many programs that can assist the photographer in processing a digital negative into a finished printable photograph, but Photoshop also provides the photographer with the facilities of a darkroom and a professional retoucher, even in its most elementary version. So let's look at Photoshop's basic functions. Depending on what version you may acquire of Photoshop, you will have a variety of different functions that are standard. The functions on the toolbar are most like the facilities you could utilise in an old-fashioned chemical darkroom. These include things like dodging and burning tools, cropping tools, zoom tools, and a variety of brushes to paint on the surface of a print. These tools were fundamental in the production of fine art prints and have been replicated in the Photoshop for the convenience of the photographic printer. Photoshop has added a number of other useful functions, such as the clone tool, the selection tool, and the healing brush. These tools traditionally would have most closely approximated the tools of the photo retoucher. In addition to these functions, Photoshop offers a range of other facilities to streamline the production of a final image for publication or fine art print. These include layers, a retraceable history, colour balance, exposure, contrast controls, and text overlays. While this all might appear to be an overwhelming amount of unnecessary technical extras, learning how to use at least some of these utilities is imperative to producing great photos. After downloading your photographs onto your computer and editing out the ones you don't wish to use, opening the photographs in Photoshop will give you the opportunity to examine them carefully for correct exposure, any dirt on the sensor, sharpness and general clarity of colour and contrast. If any of these areas need correction, it is a simple matter to modify by using the tools and adjustment layers. The best way to learn how to use Photoshop at a very basic level is to do some of the tutorials that are associated with the program. Reading the manual that is supplied by Adobe is not essential but highly recommended. While an expert knowledge of Photoshop is not necessary for the average photographer, it is always an advantage to have an overview of how the program really works. So if you have a copy of Photoshop, don't be afraid to experiment with your photographs. Unlike the old darkroom days, you don't need to print anything until you are absolutely happy with it first. However, the major deciding factor in good photographic print reproduction lies within the capacity of the sensor in the camera to provide good, clear colour rendition with enough pixels to capture the image. Setting up a photograph for printing, whether you take it to your local print shop or buy a personal printer, can be a matter of understanding how to size the photograph correctly as well as adjust the colours. A good rule of thumb in sizing a photograph for print is to remember that the resolution should be set at 300 dpi, which is dots per inch, which directly relates to how much ink that reaches the photographic paper. The more dpi, then the less gaps and the more intense the colours. Also, to get a decent 8 by 10 inch print, you would need to size the image to about 3600 by 2400 pixels. Anything less than this amount of pixels and the image starts to break up and look unsharp. The more pixels a camera can utilise, the larger the print size that can be reached. Therefore, cameras with high-level sensors tend to be more professional. Knowledge of file types and sizes is fundamental to achieving great print results, but many local print shops can also service your needs, so don't be afraid to ask them. In the next lesson, we will look at an actual Photoshop layout and how we can navigate around the various functions. Until then, happy snapping!